Hey folks, Blackcross here, and today I figure I'd do another discussion video. Have you ever been a fan of something and you wanted to have either anything or everything that involved that particular thing that you're a fan of? Whether it be a movie such as The Avengers, or a particular artist, singer, like for instance, Keith Urban or Vanilla Ice. Or for most gamers, we usually turn into our favorite magazine corporation, and we hope that they put on the cover our favorite games. So, for as long as I've been subscribed with Game Informer, which a lot of people have mixed feelings for Game Informer. Personally, for me, it's the best way to get my information on upcoming titles. And, normally, when it comes to covers on game, they do one of two things. Either one, they pick the most important or the most popular topic that people are talking about in the upcoming month, or they just do a collage of games that's been talked about for the last month and a half or something like that. Normally on E3 especially, they do a collage of multiple titles into one cover. Sometimes, on the other hand, they can do like one of 4 covers that you'll get, and sometimes you won't even find the other 3. Today, on the other hand, Game Informer actually put a cover that, in my personal opinion, is one step closer to having Kingdom Hearts 3 as the main cover. Which I'm still waiting for, but I guess that won't be until Kingdom Hearts 3 gets confirmed. In which case, it better look badass. But this one looks pretty badass in my opinion, it does. So, what game did Game Informer put on the cover? Final Fantasy 15, baby. Final Fantasy 15. And oh my gosh, it looks freaking awesome. I absolutely love it. It looks absolutely awesome. I mean, look at the artwork in this. This looks absolutely adorable. I love it. Now, the back isn't so much to talk about. I mean, it's got like a picture frame in the back, and then it's got their little dog there. Which, I mean, the backs are mostly like the extension of what the cover looks like. Like, here's the overall look of what the cover actually is. But, I mean, it's just, I'm very proud of this one. I really am. I'm really proud that they have picked a game that I'm excited for. And Final Fantasy 15 is a good reason to. 10 years in development, well, 10 years of work in development, should I say. And 4 years have been mostly in gameplay. And to see this right here makes me happy. And they've got a pretty big article about Final Fantasy 15. Basically 20 pages of an article based on Final Fantasy 15. It is pretty ridiculous, and I absolutely love it. I just got it today, so I hadn't really looked at the whole thing myself. But here's the starting article as it is. I mean, this is freaking amazing. So basically, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be reading parts of this article. If you ever want to check it out, do so, because I think you can go on Game Informer and you should be able to look it up as well. This one's done by Joe Juba. I'm sensing a Star Wars joke here somehow. I don't know why. But Final Fantasy 15 emerges from its long development with hopes of reclaiming the RPG crown. Very appropriate, considering you're reclaiming your throne. So, it's a very appropriate themed title right there. Okay, this is actually a popular topic that people have been asking for a long time now. Like, for the past 3.5 weeks since it's been announced, people have been wondering about this topic. So, I'm going to read this part right here. What about PC? Final Fantasy 15 September 30 release date applies to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game. Square Enix has not made an official announcement regarding the existence of a PC version. much less its potential release date. Even so, Final Fantasy XV tongue twister right there. Eventually move to PC seems inevitable to us. All 3 Final Fantasy 13 games are on the platform now, for instance, but don't count on its launch alongside the console versions. Basically, people have been wanting Final Fantasy 15 to be on the PC as well, next to PS4 and Xbox One. It makes sense considering that the majority of Final Fantasy games, even now, are available not only on Steam, but also on PC as well. Like, for example, recently Final Fantasy IX got released for PC as well. So it only makes sense to have 15 on PC, but yet it has not been deemed to be put on PC yet. Hasn't been said. But according to what I've been reading so far, if they do release it on PC, it is to be more superior than the console versions. I don't know how much more you can top compared to what it looks, or how well it would perform. Either way, the PC version would be a little bit better performance, because I mean, that's what people say. Personally, I don't know, considering I don't have the most powerful computer in the universe. But I've got close to a pretty damn good computer right now. So, let's read what else this says here. Okay, here's an interesting one right here. This is interesting. Who is the villain? Most Final Fantasy games, which, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you pretty much know the basic concept of how it eventually ends up, which is true. Final Fantasy games have had a same pattern. The main series, not side-along stories, just the main series themselves. There's always somebody or something that's tried to become a godlike creature, and after he succeeds in becoming a godlike creature, or said godlike creature, they claim that the world is no longer necessary to continue and tries to destroy it. That's basically the plot. A god or a godlike figure or somebody who's trying to become a godlike figure is trying to destroy the world. And you as the hero is trying to stop them or defeat them or said destroy them. One or the following 3. Basically that. It's basically been the same. It's been like that for Final Fantasy 4, I know. It's been like that for 7, 8, 9, 10... 12, even though there wasn't one that was trying to become a godlike figure. But when you consider the fact that at the end game he technically gathers energy and basically becomes something bigger than what he normally should be, yeah, you might as well count that. Plus he was trying to destroy an entire civilization with a gigantic anti-normal machine. And then if that ain't the case, you also got 13, which their government tried to become the ultimate creation and tried to destroy themselves. Because they didn't want to live anymore. Are you getting the picture here? Death seems to roam around everything. But let's find out what the villain is for 15. With the world facing a supernatural threat, not to mention the various powerful individuals in the Nibelheim Empire, narrowing down the field to one antagonist might seem difficult. However, a single figure does eventually emerge as your foe. Is not an if I can't seem to read today. Why is that? It's not an immeasurable cast of villains, said director Hija Tabata. Again, if I mispronounce that name, I do apologize. There's certainly one evil entity in the game, though Taba, I'm gonna call you Taba, I do apologize again, doesn't want to spoil the villain's identity for players. He does offer some insight about the qualities he thinks are necessary in a good antagonist. I think a good villain is a character that you could potentially create a project or a game around as the main character, one with a clear background and drama. So that's an interesting thought to go around. Apparently, Square Enix do various different ways of how they make their game. Some companies usually start in the middle and work their way around that. Some start at the very end and then grow into that. Some maybe in the beginning. In this case, however, it seems like the game actually starts out with the main antagonist and then grow around that. Which, that's actually a pretty creative idea. If you create a good enough villain and then you work the build the world based on that villain, it makes for an interesting game. And it also makes the villain even more important. Like, most people don't think of that. I mean, why else would you have a hero in anything? Like, in a movie, in a game, or in a book? You have to have a good enough villain. And if the villain ain't good enough, then what's the point in making a game or movie based on a hero? It just seems kind of weird without a good enough villain. And there are potential good villains out there in video games. There are plenty of them. Which I might do one day, make a top 10 favorite villains in video games. I don't know. You never know what I'll do eventually. But it seems like this game was based around the ideal of this one villain. Which, if that's the case, I'm wondering who it is. Because there's like various villains in this game so far. And I'm kind of curious as to who it is. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, meeting the cast. The characters and their relationship drives the story of Final Fantasy XV. So it's important to know who's who. Players will meet and learn about other important players along the way. But here's who you should recognize as the tale begins. These are the main characters that everyone is familiar with. Like, literally, the second that the series began its long-awaited journey for release date, these are the characters that we are familiar with, which I'll go ahead and show their faces right now to where you can get an idea as to who's who. Some of them look the same, but two of them look a little bit different, as I'm sure you probably are aware of. Such as this girl right here, and then Notch's father. Which, I don't know if it's Notch or not. But according to what the game is saying, it's not. I'm used to saying Notch. I don't know. But I guess Notch is the right word to say, so let's go on to Notch first. At first, Notch seems like a blank slate. Which, for good reason, because the most popular comment that I hear when E3 first revealed Final Fantasy Versus 13 to become Final Fantasy 15 was, there's only two things I'm trying to think what it was. I only know two things about this guy. His name is Notch, and his favorite color is black. That is the most common remark I have heard when it was up and coming to become 15. Which is true, because that's all anybody knew. His name is Notch, and his favorite color is black. That was it. That was basically it, and it's the truth. But, protagonist for players to identify with. However, that isn't the case. The Prince of Lucius is a complex and isolated individual, and takes more time to understand than his compatriots. So in other words, Notch has more hidden inside of him than meets the eye, and as you being the player who plays as Notch, you discover more about him as you play as him, which, so far as I have found out, Notch has quite an interesting past, considering the fact that he is a prince. Which, some of us knew that, but I guarantee you, unless you had played the Platinum demo, you wouldn't have known how complicated his life was. Especially when you consider the fact that he's never been around his father, with the exception of when he's in the same car as his father. Which, at the end of the Platinum demo, it showed that. So, that's very interesting. Notch becomes more and more revealing as you play as him, and this becomes interesting. GLaDOS. What you see is what you get with GLaDOS. A strong and bold man who knows how to use a blade. The warrior comes from a family that has long protected the royal line of Lucius. but his friendship with Notch isn't obligated. Stop using big words! It's hard for me to read! But that's interesting, to know that his family was a long line of Guardians. That makes sense for why he's in there, but that's interesting. That is. Ignis, if you need a plan, Ignis has it. Kind of figured from the way he looked. He's not the group's leader, but he is its main technician. Ensure that everyone knows what they're doing and why. He also knows how to cook and keep his friends well fed with defined cuisine. That's interesting. Why does that remind me of Sanji from One Piece? Sanji wasn't really bright, but he's an excellent cook, so that's interesting. That is interesting. Kind of reminds me of somebody else that I know. Oh well. Prompto. You can't stay mad at Prompto. He's not the smartest or the strongest in the group, but his ability to keep his friends' spirits up is infallible when he isn't getting everyone into more trouble, of course. So basically he's the high-spirited one, but he's also the troublemaker one. That's to be figured. But now we get into the deeper parts of the characters, the ones that we don't know much about, such as Luna. In addition to being determined and intelligent, Luna is also an oracle. I knew there was something up about her. An individual with the power to commune with the gods. She and Noct are childhood friends and even have a romance connection, but their upcoming marriage is a potential one. What? Really? Didn't know about that. I knew that they were friends. I knew there was something bigger about her. I knew that they might have had like a thing going on. But marriage? Shit, Notch, what have you been doing for 10 years, man? Anyway, the next one is the father. So, Reyes, bearing the responsibility of the Lucian throne, King Reyes tries to be a good father to Noct. He teaches his son to be a good steward of the kingdom and the crystal, while also shielding him from the dangers of the crown. So, Reyes has something else that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, being king isn't always easy, but the dangers of the crown? There's something up, isn't there? Which might also explain Kingsglaive. That one's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see that movie. I'm kind of wondering how that one's going to play out. But now we go into a character who I don't know the name of, and I don't know if I'll ever get it pronounced right until the game comes out. Adelos. Again, if I mispronounce any of this, I do apologize. I'm a red-blooded redneck American who doesn't know how to read Japanese. As the Emperor of the Nymph Empire, Adelos has a sinister reputation. Nymph's influence has expanded under his rule, but he also is less active than he once was in the management of the empire. Most of those duties now fall to his chancellor, Arden. Which, you want to know who Arden is? The fedora-wearing hat guy. Yeah, we're finally going to look into him now. Arden, the Chancellor of the Nymph Empire, seems built for politics. He has an assuring determinor, but clearly knows more than he lets on. That's a necessary trait for someone effectively running the world's most powerful political intrigue. So, in other words, he's basically the one that's running the shots. The other dude, he may be the leader of the group, but the other guy's controlling the shrine. So there's something else in this picture. This is getting good. Let's see if there's anything else that we can look into. Okay, it's got the part where it's talking about the expanding Final Fantasy universe, such as Kingsglaive, Brotherhood, and Justice Monster 5. If you don't know what Justice Monster is, it's basically a game for your cell phone, and it's basically a pinball game. If you ever want to check that out, check it out on the main Final Fantasy 15 YouTube page, and it'll have that trailer for you guys, if you don't know that now. Oh dear lord. Okay, I'll try to read this article because I'm kind of interested in how this one is. Calling for Help, which is basically going into detail of the summons for Final Fantasy 15. I'm kind of interested in how this is going to pan out. So, anything... Basically, I'm going to read some of the more important details. So, let's see what all it says. Okay, here we go. Almost every summon has two facts: a boss battle and an impressive attack sequence. Everyone who finished Episode Dusea was likely amazed by the Rama summon at the end, a gigantic being descending from the skies, picking Notch up and scorching the lands with a searing bolt of lightning. Yeah, it certainly was impressive. Fucking hell. Power like that doesn't come easy. You need to prove your worth in liberating encounters against the beasts, referring to as either Asturos or Ancient in the game. Basically, there are battle requirements, which I knew there was, but how to summon them. That part I'm curious about, because if it's like, oh, you just gotta get your health down to 0 and you can potentially summon them, that would be kind of pointless, I think. You want to... I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, you want to be able to summon stuff, but there has to be more to it. If you just summon them because you're down to 0, every player would do that. Every player would actually lose their HP down to 0 just to beat a boss. Some players would. Not all, but some would, actually. Wait, what? Okay, this is interesting. When called upon, Titan will think and react depending on where he is in relation to not. For example, maybe it's closer to run, or maybe it's easier to throw a boulder, or he may give up and go home. So there are these different action triggers that determine his event. In addition, if players are in a dungeon, summons will be able to find them and perform alternate attacks, like Rama piercing the ground with his staff. Even the means of summoning changes, depending on their personality. The conditions for calling on the Archons are different. This kind of adaptability, coupled with the overall virtual quality of the creatures, should bring back the excitement and anticipation to summoning that has been missing in recent installments. So according to what that paragraph is stating, depending on where you're at and depending on the circumstances, summoning these creatures will react differently based on your location. In the open field, that's a different story. Basically, they'll be there, they'll be gigantic, they'll be enormous, and they'll pull off these instant kill moves, basically. On the other hand, though, if you're in a dungeon, things will actually be different based on these summons' personalities. So in other words, they kind of worked out a system where these creatures will actually change depending on the location. So I'm kind of curious as to what all they'll do and what all they can do. That's the interesting part. Okay, this is the last page, and this is the interesting one. I'm kind of wondering what this says. Damn. I must be getting tired right now. Of course, then again, I did record like 8 hours today, so... Let's see what this says. Final Fantasy's future. Square Enix is currently focused on Final Fantasy 15, and the company hasn't made any announcement regarding Final Fantasy 16. Of course, that would make sense. And beyond. However, we already know that next major bet for the franchise, Final Fantasy VII Remake, after Final Fantasy 15, this reimagined epic will be the next core Final Fantasy installment, or rather, installments when the project was first announced, meaning that it's being episodic. When the project was first announced, people were confused by its multi-part nature, but the goal is to structure it more like Final Fantasy XIII than an episodic series. You probably shouldn't say that. I'm going to tell you right now, you probably shouldn't have said that. That's, according to most people, that's the wrong word to use. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate 13, I actually like it. But compared to most fans, they apparently don't. It will essentially be a full-scale game for each part of the multi-part series, says producer Yoshiro Kisa. In 13, each installment told the story from a different angle. It was kind of like approaching an unknown territory in a sense, whereas with Final Fantasy VII Remake, we already have a pre-existing story, so it wouldn't really make sense if this isn't encompassed in the multi-part series. So if we're just looking at each of these parts, one part should be on par with the scale of one Final Fantasy XIII game. Okay, so in translation, each part that they're going to release is like a full-fledged Final Fantasy game. Which makes sense, but that all depends. I say that all depends because you've got Final Fantasy VII. Now, if they're going to do what I think they're going to do, which would make sense, they're going to make each part based on the disc that the game itself was based on. For example, Part 1 would be involved with Part 1 of the disc. Part 2 would be involved with Part 2 disc 2 that is, and then the final episode would be based on disc 3, which involves all of the side quests, all of the mini quests, all of the additional stuff, and everything. Which I want to do a Final Fantasy VII once and not once. Basically, what I would like to see. Well, I'll do one definitely later on, but for right now, this is 15. Even though the team is working off a pre-existing story, it is also taking liberty with the content, and nothing is off limits. I, along with Nomura-san and Nochia-san, who are involved with the remake, were involved with the original Final Fantasy VII, which is an interesting to note. We were the people who created it, so in the sense, we don't think anything is untouchable. That isn't to say we're changing everything. The remake is still early in production, but fans can safely expect a shorter development timeline than the decade-long road Final Fantasy 15 has traveled. Well, that may be true, but considering you first had the ideal brought up when PlayStation 3 got made, to show off that little scene, you did that on yourself, technically. You really did. in my personal opinion. You did that on yourselves. But at least you are making a remake for Final Fantasy VII. At least that much we can say. Surely to goodness you should be able to go to GameInformer.com and be able to look this up. But yeah, I mean, it's just the detail that they have with this article. I'm actually interested to see how far it goes. Game Informer, again, they're not the best game magazine, but they do ask some interesting questions. And like I said, the cover, I love this cover. I look at this. This is amazing. I never thought I would frame a game, frame a magazine cover based on a video game, but if there was one next to Kingdom Hearts 3, it would be Final Fantasy 15 cover, so that's cool. Oh, and also, too, I should also mention, they usually have a Game of the Month that they talk about, right? Want to take a guess as to what the Game of the Month is? If you guess something else, you're wrong. Dark Souls 3. I'm a happy gamer. But yeah, Dark Souls 3 got Game of the Month. Yes. Me is happy. I think it had like a 9 point something. Yeah, 9.25, which is very impressive actually. It is. Which I'm currently playing right now, so go figure. But yeah, let me know in the description if you thought this was pretty interesting. Again, normally don't do this, but because it made it on the cover, I was very happy. I was very happy. Very rarely do I get my favorite, like, absolute favorite game on a cover. But when I do see it, I absolutely love it. I do. But anyway, that's it for this discussion video. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you in the next video. So until then, this is Black Cross signing off. Take care, guys.